Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast, the show where aspiring and experienced matchmakers come to sharpen their skills, grow their businesses, and elevate the matchmaking industry. Your host is Arlene Washburn, an award-winning ethical matchmaking advocate, mentor, and industry innovator. Let's dive in.
Welcome back to another episode of the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Arlene Washburn, and today we're diving into a subject that touches the heart of so many matchmakers and clients: love without borders. Post-COVID, the way we connect has changed forever. Remote work has opened up the door to global romance, and more singles are open to finding love across borders. But with international love comes a whole new set of legal, emotional, and practical challenges. And joining us today is someone who is not only an expert on the legal side of cross-border relationships, but also someone with a deep understanding of what it takes to make these relationships thrive. Please welcome Andy Semotiuk. He is a U.S. and Canadian immigration attorney who has helped more than 10,000 clients and has written extensively for Forbes on immigration issues affecting real people like your clients. Welcome, Andy.
I'm happy to be here, and I'm very excited to talk about this topic. I think it's really an important topic.
Thank you. And I know life has changed. And, there's so many political things going on, so many shifts happening in our society, both in America. I know you're in Canada and all over the world, quite frankly. But while that's happening, you have people connecting where they meet online and they start a relationship, and over time have to create a plan for how they come together, after visiting each other and deciding that they want to pursue the relationship. And so that's like a massive shift that is now more prevalent than ever. So what are your thoughts on this whole, love without borders?
Well, there's a lot to it. And if you're in such a relationship, or if it looks like something's developing for you, there are a few things to consider. We can talk first about just the relationship, and then maybe some of the legalities regarding immigration and getting together wherever you may want to live. So starting about the relationship itself, I would say a good way to start is to ask yourself, what do you have in common with the person you're dealing with? And I like to think of it metaphorically as two circles, two people being two circles. Let's see if I get this. And, you have to match up somehow, and whatever is in the middle when you cross these two circles is what you have in common. And the stuff on the other sides are things that you have opposite each other, or at least not in common. And it's funny, I was just talking to someone the other day, a therapist, about this subject, and he was saying, I was talking about dating and the difficulty of finding a match. And he was telling me the way to do it really is you should define absolutely what you must have in a relationship to start.
Mm-hmm.
And then you should define absolutely what you cannot tolerate from the other side in the relationship. And then the rest could be it would be nice to have, but it doesn't have to be there, provided that the core values are there. And I think that's an excellent way of looking at it in terms of meeting people online, talking to people, and trying to sift out from the chef from the whatever.
Right. English is my second language.
Trying to get down to people who really matter,
Mm-hmm.
and who match up with you. I don't know about you. I think that a really key element to an effective, the key principle of an effective relationship is consent in everything you're doing. When I was in university, I had a mentor. His name was John Kolaski, and he was a really strange guy. For 30 years, he was a member of the Communist Party of Canada, and I was studying at UBC in Vancouver. And what happened to him was he got an invitation from the former Soviet Union to go to the Soviet Union and study at the higher party school there. So he went over there and he studied. And when he got there, he realized, oh, this is all garbage. This is not communism or whatever I believe in. This is something totally different. It's a Russification of the people. And so on and so on. He left after 2 years, actually got kicked out after 2 years because he was talking to all the dissidents and so on. And he reformed. He became I don't know what you call it, a liberal, I guess. Someone who was dedicated to freedom, human rights, etc. So one day I'm in the library studying to become a lawyer, and he's coming toward me. And
Come closer to the mic. I can't hear you.
Oh, sure.
There we go.
So I'm studying in the library, and he comes close to me, and he's coming my way, and I realize, that's my mentor. He's going to teach me something. I got to be on my toes. And he comes up to me, he says, "Andy, does the means justify the end?" And I'm thinking, okay, now I have to guess this right. What's the answer? I says, yes. He says, no. Every means is an end in itself. Every means has to be moral. And in dealing with people, he pointed out, what's important is to treat every person as an end in themselves. That is to say, do not use people for your own purposes. Always treat them with consent. Deal with consent in anything you're trying to get them to do. If they don't give you consent, don't do it. So I would say that's the really critical element in a good relationship.
But and I think I agree 100%. But I would say with people meeting online these days, and I can meet somebody in the UK. I happen to have been there, but like if I've never been to the UK and I don't know anything about the culture or whatever, and you're meeting people, and then you kind of want to get together at some point, there's so many intricacies, and in talking about the relationship itself is coming in with a lot of curiosity and respect, because you're learning about a new culture. Even if you speak the same language doesn't mean that you're the same, right? And I myself happen to be in an interracial marriage. As you know, we were talking about this. My husband is Ukrainian, English, and Irish. And when you come from two different places where you don't know each other's culture, there's some positives to that, because you have a lot more curiosity, and you kind of like just want to get to know, and you're more interested. As sometimes when you're coming from the same culture, which is a good thing too, however, you take a lot of things for granted and you assume a lot of things about the individual because you're from the same culture, but you came from different households and you're going to be raised differently, right? So I think from the relationship side of things, I think that's super important to know. But then now these two people want to get together and end up in one of those locations, right? Because there's got to be a path to having that relationship where you're both in the same place. And I don't know if I'm just assuming this. You correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this harder to do now? Because I know like in 2026, you're now going to have to ask permission as an American. If you want to go to Europe, there's a new law now that you have to get.
Yeah,
So,
that's true. Yeah, so things are getting harder, and that we're heading towards the legal aspect of the discussion. Sometimes you're describing opposites attract. That works. But sometimes you want, well, the same, that works also. So it depends on the relationship, I guess. But clarity in values is something I think you have to dig for. But now turning to the question
have
here.
it in common, to your point, yes.
Yeah. Travel is getting harder internationally. And like you pointed out just now, there's a new regime in Europe that requires, before you go to Europe, you have to electronically online put in your details, and they have to approve you before you fly in. I think it's called ETIN, I think something like that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing, just to visit. So let's say your partner's in Europe and you're in the United States, you have to fill in this electronic form as part of the process Then you have to have a passport to travel overseas. You have to have a passport because coming back into the United States is impossible without a passport unless you're a permanent resident or something. But even then, you have to fly in on some passport and show your permanent resident card to get back into the United States. But now we're getting into the nitty gritty here, which is let's say the relationship has evolved to the point where you've decided you want this partner to come and live with you in the United States or Canada or whatever. So now we're in a situation that there are two ways to do it to the US. One way is you can sponsor someone from overseas to come to the US as a fiance. And there's this television program, 90 Day Fiance,
Yeah.
watch about some of the disasters and some of the strange things that go on with the couples like that. Or you can marry the person, say overseas, and then just sponsor them to come to the United States. And I'll just talk a little bit about each, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Okay. So with respect to sponsorships, fiancé sponsorships, if let's say I'm going to talk about Americans sponsoring people to come to the US. And there's similar rules for Canada, but we can cover that differently. With regard to the United States, if you're from Canada, your spouse is from Canada, this thing I'm about to explain doesn't work for you. You don't want a fiancé sponsorship. Just go straight to a marriage and sponsor the spouse. But elsewhere, anywhere elsewhere, it's possible to do this fiancé sponsorship. Now, here's my experience from, I've been at this business for over 40 years. Here's my experience on it. Often it's the guy, and, he's lonely. He's watching TV, and there's, these ads about, these beautiful girls from wherever, Poland or Ukraine or wherever it is, anxious to meet you, so they meet. And sometimes they go over and meet these girls, and they fall in love, and they want to sponsor them. But they're a little cautious, they don't know really, 1-2 week visit isn't enough. They'd like to, they don't want to marry they don't want to buy the package before they're sure that the package is worthwhile. So they want to bring them over. And a good way to do it is this fiancé package. So what it is let's say it's a guy in the US. He files a petition for the woman from overseas to come to visit, and then goes through a process, and ultimately that lady would be interviewed at a U.S. consulate overseas, given a visa to come to the U.S., and on entry will be given 90 days to marry the guy.
Okay, so that's where they get that 90-day fiance. So it's legitimately a thing. And has that changed at all since the new administration?
It's still
interesting. That's almost shocking. Okay.
Now, I just want to share with your listeners what the process is like. It's not like 2 weeks and she's here. No, or he's here, whatever. It's a longer process. What happens is you file a petition, and the petition has to be adjudicated. And that petition usually is like 5, 6, 7 months to be adjudicated.
Oh, okay.
And they're investigating you, the U.S. Sponsor. Now, they don't want like axe murderers or sexual perverts or whatever sponsoring foreign people. So they check you out first. Do you check out? And if you check out, then okay, they say, all right, so your petition is approved, check mark. Then it goes to what's called the National Visa Center in New Hampshire, which is similar to, it's the quarterback of all consulates in the world. And it organizes all the paperwork for the consulates, so that when the consulate gets the paperwork, all they have to do is interview the person. They don't have to worry about all the background details, police clearances, and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The National Visa Center worries about that. So a fiancé will probably have to go through a police clearance. Is she I'm thinking lady oversees the man inside, and it can be either way, whatever, and alternate relationships as well.
Hmm.
But the person overseas has to be checked out. Are they an axe murderer? Are they, a pervert or whatever it is? And have they had previous immigration infractions, such as like been in the U.S. 3 times already on this thing, and not, failed 3 times or whatever it is. So they clear them out in terms of a police clearance, and then it goes to a consulate wherever the foreign fiance is. Let's say Paris. So it goes to the Paris U.S. consulate in Paris, and they arrange an interview to talk to this fiance and say, "Where do you want to go? Who is this guy you've met? Is it serious or not?" Like it's some interview questions like that. And if everything's okay, they grant the visa in the passport. It's a fiance visa for 90 days from the time you enter to marry the guy. Now, that whole process takes probably about 8 to 9 months.
It's like having a baby.
Yeah. And then they arrive. And now the pressure's on because, day one, day two, day three, how's it going? Like, is this a good relationship? Meet my mother, meet my father. Here's my child from a previous marriage or whatever it is, right? And you have to settle in. Is this the real thing? Is this the real McCoy, or is this, forget it, I'm getting out of here?
Hmm.
And once they decide, yes, this is the real McCoy, I'm going to marry this guy. So they marry. And then the process starts all over again. The guy who sponsored the girl files another petition, this time for her to stay in the US permanently and to what's called adjust her status from visitor to permanent resident. And that process again takes about 6 to 8 months, and it also involves a medical clearance.
Oh.
So yeah, so the foreign spouse has to, what they're worried about is contagious diseases like, I don't know, what, COVID or tuberculosis or things like this. They're
Hmm.
not so much worried about if you got I don't know, a bad heart or a broken leg or whatever it is.
Hmm.
But the contagious diseases is what they're worried about. So the person who's going to stay from abroad will have to go through a medical clearance, a police clearance, and an interview. And in the interview, it's going to be all about, well, who are you, and why are you here, and is this a real marriage or a marriage of convenience? If it's a marriage of convenience, meaning you came here because you knew you didn't marry him, you married his passport so that you could stay. And again, so the net import of all this is for about a year and a half to 2 years, you're in nowhere land trying to get this thing like cooked or together so that you end up with permanent residence, a green card.
And in all the years that you've been doing this work, has anybody ever been declined because they believe that it's it's an arrangement just to come into the country? Or because I know there are situations where people pay someone to marry them to come to this country, etc. Have you seen anybody get turned down for that?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I've had. Well, I've certainly seen it from other clients, not my client, but others. But even in my own clients' cases, they got into deep water, and it didn't work out. For example, someone was previously married, didn't disclose that they were previously married, and now at the end of the road they find out, wait a minute, you got another family here with 3 kids.
Oh my goodness.
How's this going to work? And so you have to get through all that. Well, from a point of view of someone in this sauce trying to make their way through, I guess what you want to do is you have to find the truth. Is this the real thing? Am I dealing with a real person here that's sincere, and or is this guy marrying me for my money or for my passport? You know, I've had cases, not many, but like dozens, where at the end of the road, the person who sponsored the foreign spouse has
Mhm.
learned. The guy showed up, and then the next day, or she showed up, and the next day, goodbye, Charlie. I'm in. I've got my permanent residence. Goodbye to you, and they stay.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, we covered this part, right? So I want to introduce this movement that's dubbed the Passport Bros. I was interviewed for a documentary, and if anybody's interested in hearing it, just go to the Love Pro Mastermind Academy and lovepromastermind.com, and you'll see in the media section, it's a great documentary, and they interviewed me all day. I think there's two sentences that I that I have in that show, but these are men who are often Americans who are seeking wives in countries with lower economic development, and sometimes, claiming women abroad are more traditional or more submissive. And some of them do remain in these different countries because they legitimately, they get married, they're happy, they want to be there. And often they want to bring these women back. And in some cases, and this is kind of what I want to talk to you, it might be a little controversial. I'm not saying that all men who go to these countries are going there to take advantage of women or whatever, but sometimes, it's a guy who's maybe 50 years old marrying a 20-year-old, no judgment, or, bringing them back to this country. Or you have situations where these women leave their country, their families, their support system, and then they find themselves in another country and perhaps are being abused, but then they can't do anything about it because they don't want to lose their status. I mean, what's been your experience with that?
Yeah, it's out there. So in the period where they're waiting, that's when they're the most vulnerable. Once they got their green card, they can take off on the guy, but the problem is they're economically dependent on the guy
Hmm.
in many cases. So where are they going to go? How are they going to survive without economic support? But there are women's shelters that these women can go to, and it's a tough decision to make and to somehow. But if you want to survive and live a decent life, maybe that's the kind of decision you have to make. But the other side is true also. I have had experiences, in this case, men sponsoring women coming to the United States or Canada. And these women are out to milk the guy for every penny he's got.
Hmm.
And they're naive. The men are naive. They're sheltered. They don't have people skills, and they don't know how to deal with sort of street smart women who fleece them for everything they're worth. And before long, the poor guy is out in the ditch, and the woman sitting in the house, and they got a divorce going, and the lawyers are blocking him from living in his own house. There's that happening too.
Yeah.
So, that's the darker side of this experience, human experience.
Yeah. And I had a friend who he owned a restaurant. He brought a woman back from Italy to live with him. He thought this was going to be the relationship. It didn't work out, and he wanted for her to go to get, because she was living with him, etc. And she ruined his reputation. And I don't know, this is all hearsay, so I'm not going to side with him or whatever, but the long and short of it is that she started saying that there was some sort of abuse, physical, what have you. And he lost his restaurant, he lost his reputation in the community, he had to move out of the area. And he swears up and down, but I don't take sides in this situation because there are a lot of people who are victimized. And
Yeah.
if you're
Well,
not there and you don't know, there's nothing you can say. But
I have
It's
a,
crazy.
I don't have a client, but I have a friend who went overseas to marry a girl, brought her back to Canada, in this case, Canada. And he's very well off, this friend of mine.
Mm.
And perhaps fortunately for him, what happened is as soon as she landed and she got her papers, she said, "Goodbye, Jack. That's it. You're gone." And he hasn't seen her since. And well, at least she didn't take him for his wealth. I mean, he regrets that he married her and brought her to Canada. But on the other hand, she's happy and he's not happy, but could be worse. So there are all kinds of stories like that. I don't know what you could do to protect yourself. Okay,
Right.
let's talk about that a little bit. Um, there's a thing called a prenup agreement, which is for if these rich people, they all have prenup agreements, which is like if you're Donald Trump and you're married someone, you want the woman to sign a prenup agreement to say that whatever she had before the marriage is whatever she's going to get after the marriage, subject only to, I don't know, some payment of $500,000 or whatever it is, and no more. And so they sign that before they marry. And by and large, those agreements are enforced. So the parties are clear on what's going to happen if the relationship ends up on the seashore. Um, there's a post-marriage agreement that you can also.
Post. Hmm.
It's something new, new to me at least anyway. Do family law, so it was new to me. Where even if you married someone rich, after the marriage, you can sit down and make an agreement on how things are going to be split in the event you don't see eye to eye down the road, and they are enforced too.
Hmm.
So for some couples, like if you're terribly wealthy, that you're going to inherit I don't know what, the Heinz fortune or something. I guess it's a fact of life that you probably have to worry about things like this. If tremendous wealth is involved, and you have to get the other side to sign the agreement. But I'm reluctant to go down that route, because if you're already talking about breaking up even before or just at the time you're getting married, like, um, what are the chances this thing's going to last? I mean,
Well, it's a 50-50 chance, so I'm a big proponent of prenups. If
okay.
there's a huge disparity, and that could be a woman who has a ton of money marrying. I just feel like marriages are 50-50. You don't know. So you're taking a big risk after you've put a lot of, especially if you're, a baby boomer, because they're still the most single group out there, and they've amassed some money and they want to leave some money to their kids or whatever, and they don't want to lose that. I remember years ago when I was a matchmaker, I had an event on prenups, and there was a financial planner who was against prenups, but she couldn't make the case for. She's like, "Well, you can use financial planning to mitigate." And there were two lawyers. One was a family law attorney. The other one was an estate attorney, and they won because the financial planning just wasn't covering it. And it's a shame, but we have to think that way, especially when you have kids and you want to leave something for them.
The kids are a big deal in a relationship, especially if there are any special needs involved on the part of anybody.
Yeah.
That's extra special, requires extra special care. And in any relationship, when it goes sour, there are two basic issues. One is money, and the other is children, access to custody over children. So I suppose, in a sense, you can work all that out in a prenup or, an agreement in advance. Um,
But Andy, what do you do when you have this long distance relationship and you feel like, okay, this is happening, things are going well, and they've gone back and forth to each other's countries, but you have kids. One side has kids or both have kids. Now we make a decision, okay, we're going to live here in this country, whether it's the US or somewhere else. what happens to the children? How does that work out? Do you have to sponsor them and go through that whole process you had explained?
That's a good question
Let me
because
see.
the answer is yes. Now, luckily, if you're sponsoring, a spouse,
Hmm.
and that spouse has children, you can sponsor the children as well. It's an extra sponsorship, but you can do it. So they all come in together
At the
and
same
become your
time.
permanent residents. Yeah.
Okay.
You have to keep that in mind. Like it's amazing how people can forget about children and end up down the road on, oh, we forgot the children. It happens. So, and, you know, timing becomes an issue. Maybe the kid's in high school and wants to go to university, or maybe the kid's in grade school wants to go to high school. And children, I know in my case, as I was growing up, I desperately wanted to cling to my friendships, and I
Hmm.
didn't want to move places because of the friendships that kept me. And as you get older and you fall, for some guy or some girl, that's even more reason why you don't want to go. If you're a kid and the parents are, deciding, okay, we're moving to, I don't know, Hawaii or whatever it is. And oh my goodness, there go all my friends and have to start life all from scratch again. For a kid, that's very traumatic. So
Yeah.
there's a traumatic element there, emotional traumatic element in a move like that you have to factor into,
I'm
making a
sure.
decision on how to go.
And a step parent, that's another emotional factor.
Yeah, the parents, like the step parent has to agree to allow the kids to go, or you have to have a custody order that enables you to go without agreement of the parent.
Oh,
That's
right.
a key element. If you're in a relationship and your spouse, your partner has children, there's a strong chance that there's somebody out there that's going to have to approve all this in order for those kids and your spouse to come to be with you.
Right,
Uh,
right. Because you usually have like a geographical location because you're divorced and you have to share custody. So
yeah,
now that's another added element.
that's a
Can we
big.
talk about costs? Like, what does it cost? I mean, is this a lot of money for people to
It's not
sponsor?
cheap. It's not true. Lawyers are not cheap. You ever hear of a cheap lawyer? I don't know. You don't want one like that.
Oh my gosh. You get what you pay for, right?
I think so, pretty much. I mean, lawyers are not, despite concerns about lawyers. Not all lawyers are sharks. They're going to take you for everything you're worth. Uh, and by the way, if you're going to deal with a lawyer, a thought to have in mind is you don't want to hire a shark. I'm going to get that woman got to me. I'm going to get that woman. I'm going to hire a shark. We'll get her. If you're hiring a shark because you want him to get after your, ex, if he's a shark to you too, as well as to the other spouse. You don't want a shark. You want someone with some character and decency, to get
Absolutely.
this thing solved somehow. Um, all of this, a lot of it is just effective communication, but that's another element. If your spouse doesn't speak English, for example, and you only speak English, you marry some. I have a friend who's a lawyer. He's passed on now, but his name was Rudy, and he hired. Basically, he decided, you know what? I'm going to go to. I think he went to. Just hang on, I'll think for a sec. Thailand.
Hmm.
Find the ideal girl for me, and I'm going to marry her. And he went to Thailand, and he found a girl. I think she was about like 25 years younger than he was. He married her, brought her back into Canada. They lived happily ever after until he died. And to this day, I mean, to the last moment, she was with him. But that was a rare experience. That
Yeah.
would be hard to do. More likely is, you're online, you meet someone from Colombia, let's say, or wherever. You don't speak Spanish, she doesn't speak English. And now you're in this, but, chemistry works. The looks are good. You go for a visit, 2 visits, and things are really hot. Oh, hey, let's go. but you haven't talked it all out. You can't even talk it out because you don't even speak the same language. So,
Yeah.
in complicating all these issues, the linguistic difference can make a big difference.
Well, that and also people, if you meet and you're highly attracted to one another, and there's that infatuation and they're in limerence, they're not even thinking about the logistics, the important things that matter, and then all of a sudden you make a decision like, okay, well, we have to get together, and they haven't really thought out all the ins and outs. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not opposed. I personally feel like a citizen of the world, so I'm all for people having love without borders and meeting the
Yeah.
love of their life wherever that person may be, but just being really smart about it. And one question I do have: when do you need an immigration lawyer? Because I grew up in a Hispanic community where people were always requesting people, but they couldn't really afford to hire a lawyer. I think they used to do a lot of that stuff on their own. Is it necessary to have an attorney for immigration?
Well, put it this way. Well, let's start with this idea. Let's say I have a toothache. I know I have to go to a dentist. Let's say my car breaks down. I know I have to go to a mechanic. Let's say I break my foot. Oh, I know I got to go to a hospital. People don't know. Generally, by and large, people don't know that there's this occupation, this profession that deals with immigration matters. They're called immigration attorneys, lawyers.
Hmm.
That's what I am. So we deal with immigration issues, all the problems with immigration. And for example, in my life, I see my role as helping clients improve their lives through immigration. That's what my job is.
Hmm.
I'm happy if I can do that for you. Um, that's my mission statement, so to speak.
Hmm.
Now, there are a lot of people who can't afford lawyers. Lawyers are expensive. So, but you're in love and you want to, you do it. What can you do? You do what you can because you don't have the money to do it.
Hmm.
But good advice would be just like I can take a pair of pliers if I've got a bad tooth and pull it out. I mean, it's effective, but it's not the way you normally want to do it.
Yeah.
If you can, you should go to a dentist. The
Mhm.
same thing is true with immigration and especially this spousal area of immigration.
Yeah, because you really know all the ins and outs of
Yeah.
all those things. So you started to say that you were going to go over two different methods. One is
Oh, yeah.
90-day. What's the other one?
Okay. The other one is the one I favor, actually. Now, it depends where. So, for example, if your spouse is in China, and I'm using a classic example, the man is in the United States, the woman is abroad. It might be other variation, whatever it is.
Hmm.
But let's say that option. And your spouse is in China, then this 90-day fiance thing may be the right way to go. And even if you marry, there are ways to help this spouse come to the United States earlier and not have to wait an eternity to arrive. There's a special visa that you can apply for to have them come sooner. But by and large, in other cases, in most cases, other than Canada, which is quicker, you can do it quicker. The Canadian way I suggest is this way: no fiance, just straight to this. And it is simply this: you decide, oh, hell with it. I'm going to pull the plug. I'm going to marry this girl. So you go overseas, you get married. You get the document showing that you've got the marriage certificate. Okay. So you come home. First thing you do is sponsor her, file the sponsorship papers. And then there's the waiting game. You have to wait for the papers to come through and so on. And the process is the petition is approved and it's sent to the National Visa Center, very similar to the other process I mentioned. The National Visa Center gets a police clearance, they get the medical clearances, they require you to go through some questions about the foreign spouse and so on. Once that's done, the file is sent abroad to whatever country it is where the spouse is, the future spouse is. and there the U.S. consulate handles it from there on. But the key thing is you got a marriage certificate at the beginning of the process. You're already married. You're sponsoring a spouse. You're not sponsoring a fiance. So you're in for 100%. And the immigration part is just paperwork after the event. And the reason I suggest this process is better is because if you're sponsoring a fiance, you're going through the process 2 times.
Mm,
Once for the fiance to arrive in the US, then you marry her, and then all the way from scratch again, doing the same thing, going through the whole thing. And you're tied up for 2 years, with this thing, 2.5 years. Whereas
right.
if you marry in about a year and a half, you can get your spouse in. And
But now, is that really something you're doing just to even test out the waters to see if you even want to marry this person? Is that the whole objective in doing the 90-day fiance?
yeah,
Okay.
a lot of men in particular,
Hmm.
and women who are rich and maybe have a lot to lose if they get it wrong, say, well, you know what? Let's have this potential spouse come in so I can check her out close up.
Hmm.
See, is she the real McCoy for me?
Right.
Here's a little, I don't want to say trick, but a thing that I use to make it easier for everybody. I ask the foreign spouse what education they have, what they do for a living, etc. And I look for a way to bring the spouse in on either a study permit as a student
You
or,
took the words out of my mouth. Yep.
or as on a work permit where they're perhaps being, let's say they work for Honda in
Hmm.
Japan and they're transferred as a manager or executive to Honda in Canada or the US. So they have a work visa and they come on that basis. And that buys the couple more time and less pressure to get to know each other and work things out before you take the plunge and get married and then sponsor them. And all the paperwork is done inside the United States. Like the relationship paperwork is all done. It's called adjustment of status inside the US. It's not, sponsoring someone from the other side of the world. So I look for that if it's possible. It may be possible, for example, for a foreign spouse to have a family member already in the United States,
Mm.
a father, mother, or whatever, and they can sponsor them to come in so they get the green card and then you get the relationship going. And in the meantime, you come visit each other, on visitors' visas and so on. But the pressure's off.
Right.
This is not a pressure cooker. Whereas if you're relying on this, spousal 90-day spousal thing, fiance, or you get married right off, you're taking the plunge right off the bat, and a lot of pressure there, a lot of extra pressure on the relationship, not always healthy for it.
Yeah, and the thing is, this 90-day fiance, including that show, is a self-selection process where you are choosing someone, and sometimes people are coming at it from a perspective of, I'm lonely. I can't meet anybody here. Let me go over there. Maybe they need me more, whatever. Versus where arranged marriages are highly successful. People don't realize this in India and all these places, but those are arranged because they have looked at the backgrounds of the family. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that's done before they arrange a marriage. And then it's a different mindset, and those actually can be very successful. But when you're selecting yourself, I hate to say, like you don't have your family involved or any of that, you're more likely to not choose the right partner than if you had more of a committee involved. And that's what I love about matchmaking is a little bit of a committee involved.
You might find this strange, but I actually agree with you. I think it's very helpful to have a matchmaker to find a match for you.
Hmm.
And I also believe in online kind of dating and matchmaking. I find that people who get together in this manner are more likely to make it than people who, have show up at the bar and chemistry takes over and the rest is a catastrophe. You know? uh, sorting out these value matters, I guess, like who are you, who am I, what do you like, what you don't like,
Mhm.
sorting that out in advance so when they get together, the chemistry is the factor. By then, everything, all the big factors are already sorted out, and it's all about chemistry, whether it works or not. I find over many years that the people who have gotten together in this manner have been much more successful than the traditional boy meets girl somewhere and gets married.
Yeah. Yeah. Times have changed. It's unbelievable how different things are, and there aren't that many places now where there's community and people are congregating and meeting organically anymore. It's basically those people are online and people are sitting home
Yeah,
and on an app. I met my husband through an online dating site 15 years ago. I do believe that the online dating sites have changed significantly, and so I'm more of a proponent towards matchmaking, where you have a professional who's actually vetting and finding out all those things. Because to your point, whether you're coming from different countries, that's not so much the issue about opposites. It's more about the core values being aligned and the lifestyle goals that you have, whether you want to have children, all the questions that you're not comfortable asking when you go on a first date, or a second or even third sometimes. The matchmaker can find all that stuff out in advance and only introduce you to people that are aligned to what you're looking for. And that's why I think this is so important. And I have a lot of colleagues who are in the space of working with men or women who go to their countries to meet a spouse and come back to the US or Canada, what have you. So I'm wondering, have you ever had a not a partnership, but like a strategic alliance with matchmakers? Because I mean, and these are because people think about like, oh, it's a mail order bride, but that's not what I'm talking about. I have matchmakers with psychology degrees who are serious professionals that are in. They used to be in the Ukraine. They've left the Ukraine, most of them, or different countries where they have these amazing women who are educated and who are doing well in their country, but for whatever reason they're open to meeting men from other countries, and they make those connections. And I would think that they would have an immigration attorney, or now they know one, Andy, because they deal with that all the time. And as a matchmaker, you try to find resources for your clients to make things work. So if you really put people together, you want them to succeed and to actually be able to go
yeah.
through this process.
Well, many years ago, I'll share this one story with you. Many years ago, my aunt Helen and her husband Emil, who themselves did not have any children and didn't have that great a marriage, but they stuck it out together for 40 years or whatever it was, decided that they're going to set up a matchmaking service for all these young people who need to find true love. But they were disasters. It was just terrible. And the organization was called Meta, Meta, Meta. And
Did
they
last.
back then there was no computer, so you had to write letters, and they exchanged letters. The Meta Central exchanged letters for people and tried to match them up. They were terrible. But that's the point. You have to find a good matchmaking service, someone like you
Absolutely.
who knows what they're doing, like not just, sort of belief in love, true love, and we'll just sort it out for you.
Yeah.
I like the Jewish experience that they have matchmakers,
Mm-hmm.
um, and it seems to work. And I like what you're doing in particular. Even the licensing element, I find novel. I was not aware that that there was the movement you're kind of leading to kind of clean out this area so that you don't have shysters and so on in it.
Yeah, because it's the same as any profession out there. There are so many wonderful matchmakers who genuinely care and
Yeah,
really go into the business very heart centered and wanting to help people. But they also have very thriving, businesses where they make a good living and have a great lifestyle and all of that. But then there are some who are just in it for the money and they don't care about you. And I know because I went to a matchmaking company years ago. They're based out of California. They've rebranded, so but they're still around. And they I was a match. I wasn't a client, so they didn't care about me. They introduced me to someone who was a felon who had been in jail for harassing women, and they never told me that, and they didn't care. And so there's a lot of unscrupulous people out there that are in this industry because there's no barrier to entry. But there's a lot of wonderful matchmakers that I know, hundreds and hundreds of wonderful matchmakers all over the world. And so I have a movement to clean this up and bring ethics and compliance to the industry. And it was very well received. When I spoke to a number of matchmakers in November, that's because those are the ones that are doing the good work and actually care about following laws and doing the right thing by people. But it's going to
I
take some time.
I remember traveling to Europe maybe 10 years ago and reading the New York Times edition in Europe in Paris, and they had ads of matchmakers looking for clients. And I always wondered about them, and they were always high end. They didn't want low end clients, they wanted, wealthy clients to work with.
Hmm.
And to me, it like there was this, whiff of
What's in it for me? All about.
reliability about it, presenting themselves too cosmetic for my liking.
Hmm.
Always, But I'm all in favor of what you're talking about. I think you're on the right path, and I wasn't aware that that. Thank God there's successful dating and marriages going on, and that the love world is working.
Yeah, well, we need it now more than ever. There is a loneliness epidemic, and matchmakers are great at, if they're liaising between two people, to keep the relationship going and convincing their clients to give someone a shot. And then eventually it works out, because I always talk about the one client that I always talk about is the woman that I introduced to someone. She didn't want to go on a second date with him, and because I was liaising the whole thing, they continued to date. And 9 months in, they decided to get married, or to get engaged, I should say. And then she got married for the first time at the age of 60. I
Wow.
talk about her all the time because they're still happily married, thank God. I feel really proud of having been there. And by the way, she only met him, he only met her. It was a one and done. But to your point about the luxury matchmaker versus the everyday matchmakers, there's always going to be a Tiffany's and a Target. There's room for everybody as long as they're doing good work and being ethical and compliant with the laws. I'm okay with that. There's always Mercedes Benz and whatever Fiat. I don't know. If there's something for everyone. I just want it to be ethical and to really care about the people that you're trying to help, because
Yeah,
a lot of people are lost, and we want to
yeah.
get people getting back to getting married, having children, etc. So
Not me. I'm all in favor. I think sign me up. I'm with you 100% on that one. And it doesn't need to be that very complicated in terms of the legality of things. If people are fairly decent and they understand each other, and I have a feeling, as I mentioned before, my success rate with respect to, it's been high, but especially high I've often had people who've been matched up in this way coming through, and I've remarked many times to like my spouse and others about how much more successful it is likely that a relationship is going to make it if they go in this way, as opposed to what has been a traditional kind of search in the desert kind of thing.
I love that. Oh my gosh, Andy, this conversation has been incredibly eye opening, not just for matchmakers, but for anyone who's navigating the love across borders.
Yeah.
Um, I know listeners have gotten a lot out of this, but if they want additional resources and they want to connect with you, or there's somebody right now dealing with this and needs a really good immigration lawyer support, what's the best way to reach you?
Okay, I work for Pace Law Firm, We're in Toronto, and they have a website called pacelawfirm.com. PACE lawfirm.com. Ask for Andy when you get on the site, and you'll get a hold of me.
Wonderful. Oh my gosh. As always, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation and for sharing so many great nuggets and just bringing awareness to this, because this is super prevalent now more than ever, with people staying home, working from home, and all the nomads out there. They at some point want to come together, and you're just going to have to call Andy to get it, especially with all the experience you have and everything that you know about immigration. I really am so grateful and hope to stay in touch, Andy. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed the discussion, actually getting to know you, because we talked a couple of times before
Mhm.
for this program. And I like the subject area and what you're doing. So I was very happy to be on the program. And I'm grateful to you for having me.
Absolutely. And I hope you'll come back too. Cheers. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Have you ever felt called to help others find love? You might have the heart for matchmaking, but without the right training, turning that passion into a thriving business can feel impossible. Most matchmaking courses give you outdated theories and a certificate, but no real world strategy to build a successful business. That's where Love Pro Mastermind Academy is different. Our live Done With You training goes beyond theory, helping you develop matchmaking expertise, implement sales and marketing strategies, and master the art of client success. With expert-led instruction, accountability, and a community of like-minded professionals, you'll learn how to identify your niche, attract high-quality clients, create a seamless matchmaking process, grow a sustainable, profitable business. With over a decade of experience, we don't just train matchmakers, we create leaders in the industry. Are you ready to become an LPMA certified matchmaker and build a business that changes lives? Apply today at lovepromastermind.com.
Thank you for tuning in to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with fellow matchmakers and friends. For more resources, training, and inspiration, visit lovepromastermind.com and follow us on social media. Remember, matchmaking isn't just a career, it's a calling. Let's keep building connections, changing lives, and growing together. Until next time, stay inspired and keep matching.